Right. And he used the TGV back to Brittany.
Bus, coach.
Coach, my goodness. That'd be a fair old journey, eh?
By coach,
by
by coach.
the TGV, the Fast Express, so...
The coach was about 5 hours.
Aye, well, it's not too bad, mind you.
Well.
But, aye. And France, they don't have motorways as such in Brittany. Well, they have to, but they're toll-free, so maybe not the same quality as the rest of them from Paris out to Brittany.
No.
Over the piece I'm talking about, that part of the century. So, that's interesting. But I know in the 90s, because I was there, that you had Vale of Atholl Pipe Band, in 97, if I recall correctly.
Uh-huh.
And before that, in the early 90s, you had the Glasgow Sky Association.
Yes, well, again, I was still a wee bit involved with the festival in Campere.
As well.
And they asked me if I would help them out with bands.
So was it just Lorient you get involved with Campere as well?
Well, Lorient was for a bit.
Aye.
But I done it. And the first band that I invited to go was the Glasgow Sky.
Uh-huh.
And that's where the friendship between Kenny MacLeod and myself started.
Okay.
At that time, his brother Donald, who stayed in Falkirk at the time, was Pipe Major.
Donald's a dentist as well.
He was my dentist in Falkirk. So that's created another friendship. And I've been really friendly with Kenny since that day onwards. And Stuart also played with the Sky at that time too.
Yeah. And
I had the Vale in Campere.
and Yannick Monge's sister, Gaelle, she eventually married a tenor drummer in the Glasgow Sky Association Pipe Band, which stemmed from that particular visit.
I didn't know that.
You know Yannick Monge.
I know Yannick. I still get texts from him now and again, you know. It's either in Breton or French.
He gets in touch with myself as well.
Aye.
I was across in Britain in 97 when the Vale of Atholl had a very, very good time in Campere.
In 97?
Aye.
Well, that was me got them there.
That's right. Ian
Duncan, aye.
And
in fact, the Vale...
They actually fixed up my hotel accommodation in that place next to the river.
Was it the Transvaal?
No.
Did you go across...
I went across by car.
Did you go across to present McCallum bagpipes?
No. I just went on a private visit.
I remember.
Yeah, but I ended up walking past the Cayley Bar, which we'll explain in a minute about the Cayley Bar. And there was a Vale of Atholl Pipe Band sitting outside having a beer. And I latched on to myself, and I was sworn in as honorary band president for a week.
Aye.
So I went everywhere with the band. We had a good laugh, actually. And they were all there, all the live wires and everything else. And I ended up, Ian Duncan, the Pipe Major, he said, "You do me a favour." I says, "What's that?" He says, "They've asked me to judge a solo piping competition on the Thursday in the Gardens." He says, "I can't do that. Some of my pipers are playing in it." He said, I says, "What's involved?" He says, "It's all about 7 or 9 pipers."
I done it too.
Aye. He says, so I'm saying, so just, I says, that'll be fine. I'll be done in about an hour. It's about 5 hours because I had to play 3 times each or something.
Talking about that, as the years went on, I judged it. You know, there's 2 champions per year in Brittany, one in February and one in August.
Yeah.
Well, I judged the February one twice in Van.
Yeah.
and it was a long day. And I
That was
judged.
the Concours de Bagad,
Yeah.
which is an annual function.
That's right.
Unfortunately, it's cancelled again this year because of COVID and all the rest of it. But there's that's the indoor one, and it was held in Brest for many years. But you've mentioned Van. And then the other, the summer competitions in Lorient. So I interrupted, sorry.
I judged it Lorient 1 year too, and it's a long day.
Yeah.
Very, very long day.
Aye.
And totally different from here.
Aye.
10 judges,
I counted 13 at one point.
maybe.
But I thought that was a great thing because we're talking earlier in this conversation today about 1 year competitions with Muirheads,
Aye.
where one judge had placed another band 5 points ahead of you and all that sort of stuff, and it's almost. And I tend to think, and I stand to be corrected, that if you've got 13 or say 10 or 12, 13 judges judging at any kind of competition, then it reduces the bias level a wee bit, does it not?
It does. For example, there was a roundup after the competition, which took an hour and a half, 2 hours sometimes. And if certain of the judges and the panel couldn't come to an agreement, they had a tape recorder in the middle of the table, and they used to rewind it.
Right. And did they not also, for a bias thing, cut off the one that gave the most points to somebody and the one that gave the lowest points to somebody and just leave the other ones in the middle?
There was something like that eventually,
Aye.
but I wasn't involved with that. But again, getting back to the piping side of
Yes,
Lorient,
aye, absolutely.
we started an association, the Compagnons de Tour de Cos, which was a whisky society.
Okay.
And obviously, to become a member was by invitation. and it really developed in a big way.
Mm-hmm.
So much so that the director of Macallan came to the festival,
Okay.
and I'm still friendly with him to this day, Willie Phillips.
Okay.
And they started offering sponsorship
Of,
the Macallan Trophy.
and describe what that is.
It's a solo competition run over 2 days
Mm-hmm.
initially,
Yeah.
of 3 pipers from each of the Celtic countries, 3
Yeah.
Scotland, 3 Irish and 3 Breton.
Mm-hmm.
And the standard was very, very high.
Yes.
And we had 2 judges, 2 from Ireland, 2 from Brittany and 2 from Scotland.
Yeah.
And that was a big success.
Yes.
Eh,
How many times did each piper play? 3 times.
They played a selection of each, a selection of Irish, a selection of Scottish and a selection of
Breton.
Breton, yes.
Mm-hmm.
For the pipers from here initially, the Breton was very difficult.
Mm-hmm.
But they overcame it, I can assure you, because
Yes, aye.
from our point of view, for a long number of years, it was Scotland that came out tops.
Aye.
And there was
Kenny
a lot
MacLeod.
Kenny won it, yes.
He won it in 91, I think, or something like that.
Aye, that was
Early
the
90s,
early,
anyway.
it was the early days of the Macallan Trophy.
Yeah. And Fred Morrison, of course.
Fred, Gordon,
How
Duncan.
many times has Fred won it?
My last count was 7 times, Alan.
Aye, aye.
And Gordon Duncan was 7 times too.
Right, uh-huh.
So over the years, Scotland had a lot of success.
Yes. Aye.
But you're right, Kenny won it, and
But Patrick
Mollard.
Mollard must have had a big input there too.
He played in it in the early years,
Did he?
Alan.
Uh-huh.
But latterly, he was more in the judging side.
Judging,
of it.
yes. Aye. Did Jacques Pensée ever play in it?
No,
Right,
because there was friction.
okay.
Jackie didn't want to be recognised as a big ad. He wanted to be recognised as a pipe band.
Aye. So he
The
was
more the Celts-
leaning very much towards the
Scotland.
Scottish tradition
That's it.
rather than the Breton
That's
tradition.
correct.
Of course, Jackie's based away in the fringe of Brittany, away by some
And Cancal.
Aye.
Cancal just
Cancal,
along
aye.
for.
Yeah, yeah. So anyway, moving on. Any other Heavy LaFloch? How did he do with that competition? Did Heavy
Macallan?
ever play?
Well, Hervey came into it in the latter years.
Yeah.
When I was there,
Yeah,
way back to I don't know what age Hervey will be now, but
no.
he must have been a really young boy.
He's still a lot younger than you and I.
Well, a lot. But a lot of the Breton pipers progressed
Aye.
through the years.
Aye.
But
You get brilliant pipers now, Sylvain Hamon.
Sylvain, Hervey,
Xavier Bordeaux.
Bordeaux.
Aye.
Well, again, I'll come back to that when we come into Celtic Connections.
Yeah, absolutely, yes. Uh-huh.
Because when I get involved with Celtic Connections, well, the committee of Celtic Connections contacted me to see if it was possible for them to go to Lorient for a year.
Uh-huh.
That was the first year,
Yeah.
just to
See what's happening.
in the organisation and everything.
Yeah. Celtic Connections is something that happens. It's a festival of music in Glasgow in the winter months, the latter half of January into February. Right?
That's correct. So where did I finish there?
You were the Celtic Connections.
Aye, well, that's Celtic Connections. So initially I had grade 1 bands doing a concert, and I got Campere over, and Campere and Scottish Power done a joint concert on the Saturday night.
Yeah.
And that went down well. So we had a meeting, and they wanted to do much more on the piping side. So they kept the evening concert. So again, I had Campere over and Cap Caval over, just doing the evening concert. And we started solo piping.
Yes.
And it just sprung to my head after Gordon Duncan sadly passed on. I said we could start the Gordon Duncan Memorial solo piping competition. So I phoned Ian just to see it was agreeable, and his family. And Ian said, by all means, Dougie.
Right. That was Ian Duncan, his brother.
Ian, ex-pipe major of Vale Vassal.
Yeah.
And again, that went up and up and up.
I think Sylvain Hamon won.
He won the first year.
Yeah, because I was there.
Yes.
Quite nonchalant when he went up for the prize, to much the consternation of John Wilson, who was emceeing. He couldn't understand how everybody. He was a guy who was so laid back about winning the overall thing against Willie McCallum, Roddy McLeod, and all the rest of it, and Sylvain was quite unfazed,
Aye, but he spent a lot of time in Scotland.
Aye, but
in the early years.
Wonderful instrument that day, and of course, as usual, a great blower of the instrument,
he's
very, very clear, precise player, and everything Sylvain plays is just
he's a really composed lad, and a very, very nice lad.
Yeah.
Very, very nice. As Herville Focus too,
They're all teaching, of course, soul piping and all the rest in Britain. And Herville Foch has been a pipe major within the Cap Caval, Bagad, and of course Sylvain plays there. And I don't think Xavier, does he still play with Cap Caval?
Xavier Boudet? No.
No, I thought,
There's a wee bit of internal. The other good piper is Alexis Munier.
Yeah, he's a lawyer.
He's a
very,
lawyer.
Very good.
He's a very good piper too.
Yeah. Now, is it appropriate at this time to mention your link with the Campere, Bagad Campere?
What can't answer?
Link any
link?
Now? Aye.
I think I'm...
You've a wee bit of affection for Bagad Campere, right?
Okay. Well, again, it was becoming quite a joke in Lorient. If I was heading for Lorient, it was a laugh round the table at the meetings. Is Dougie going to Campere first, or is he coming straight to Lorient? But I could say quite honestly, I'm recognised as being part of the Bagad. Although I've no input.
No,
but the friendship's still there.
Yeah.
So much so that I got this 3 years ago.
Well, we'll take a wee photograph of that and we'll include it in the thing.
And I've still carried on the friendship with many of them.
But how did you become involved? Was it because you knew these chaps from Campere Festival and that sort of thing?
Just the first year I went with BP.
Okay.
And as I helped the drum corps on many occasions, the friendship within the Bagad just got greater and greater. I just knew nearly every member of the Bagad. And Erwin Rappa was the pipe major at the time.
See, we touched on it earlier, but Did you find that a difficulty in, did the people in France generally find a difficulty funding these people coming across from Scotland, how, in terms of travel, accommodation and other expenses, food, that sort of thing? How did that develop, or did it get better or worse, or what was it?
In Lorient?
Just Lorient and the Quimper and anything else.
Well, in Lorient it got better, but I wouldn't say it was ideal.
No.
The top grade bands obviously wanted to fly.
Yeah.
Just due to commitments, really, and they couldn't afford, a lot of them couldn't afford just to relax for 13 days and to keep the practices going. So till this day, well, since I stopped, there's not been any more than one pipe band there.
No.
One year, well, most years latterly, I had 4 bands there for the whole festival.
Yeah.
And at least 2 grade 1 bands in to do the special concerts.
Okay, right.
So the bus journey, it was quite
arduous.
It was, and the ferry journey caused some, not problems, but a bit of trouble on their arrival. The demon.
I know, the wee drum and all the rest, a big drum.
You can't blame them.
Well, it's because they're going abroad and they feel that, they're just so, plus we've all seen it. They get them dried out within a day, and then, but I find that the pipe bands really, most of them are quite professional, because if you're giving them a time and a position to line up and they just play it, then they'll do it,
With no problem that way at all.
No
problem whatsoever. They got their programme for the whole, for the 13-day period, they got their programme. They had an interpreter designated to them, and we had a meeting every morning at 11 o'clock to talk about the previous day and talk about what was happening on that particular day. That was transferred by the interpreter to the pipe major and leading drummer.
Were there other people liaising with you, with the groups in terms of food and drink? So, were there other people, liaising with you?
Yes, aye. Well.
I won't need to stop. Right. Okay.
It's a coffee machine.
Right. That's me putting a marker down. I'll start again. Right. That's fine. Carry on.
Mary! Mary! Your coffee machine's not in hell at this.
It's off, it's finished.
I know.
Well, listen, another 5 minutes we'll be back.
That's okay.
Okay.
Yeah, listen, you want pizza and a cup of tea?
That'd be lovely. Thanks. So, anyway. We got to. We're talking generally about the expenses.
Financial, yes.
Did it cause any bother, the finances, or friction or anything like that, or was it clearly understood before groups went to you that, well, all their expenses and travel expenses and the accommodation were provided, but there wasn't much else because of lack of funding to... You see where I'm going here?
Exactly. Well, in general, we had no problems whatsoever, but there was a couple of occasions where there was problems. And the biggest problem was we eventually, the festival was going up and up.
Yes.
So we started a St. Patrick's Day get-together in the Stade de France in Paris.
Okay, right.
And the Grade 1 bands had a good contract, flying to Paris. Accommodation was okay, but it wasn't a 5-star.
No.
Each band were getting £2,000 each for 2 concerts. And the first year went okay, no problems. The second year, it was a new treasurer, and there was a bit of mishap in the payment at the end of the second night.
Right, and?
Only with one band.
Right. And that's the Strathclyde Police Pipe Band. And I happen to know because you and I have discussed this in the past.
Sorry, well.
And it's no, it's a. To say from my point of view of observation, it was a misunderstanding as to let the other party off the hook a wee bit, as far as I'm concerned, because I know I think the chap in charge of the police band, he wasn't really in charge of it. He was a high-ranking officer who happened to be there, and he took on the mantle of trying to negotiate with the parties who were organising the event, and unfortunately, because of his lack of experience and knowledge and the background to this, he went off half-cocked at the whole thing. And you're talking about maybe a wee lack of experience of it from one or more persons, and the organised thing. There was an altercation verbally, and it wasn't a great outcome really at the end of the day.
No.
Was that some?
I was led to believe, even from the Toronto days, Alan, that the police, it was by police laws that a high-ranked officer or sergeant or whatever had to travel with the band. Now that happened in Toronto.
I think it was just a freebie, and somebody was.
That's correct.
Aye.
But during the times in Toronto, the 3 times I was there, the first year the band were a bit. But there was no problems. But that particular guy, he was treated like a lord when he arrived. And he was sitting with the dignitaries in the centre stand. He was getting hospitality and all the rest of it. And then, on the second night, he got a ticket to go and watch the concert. But it wasn't with the dignitaries, and that started him off. He just lost the place completely. And obviously, he went back and he was starting to rant and rave with the band. And one thing led to another. And when it came to the payout of the money, they were asked to go to the treasurer's office at 5:30 that night. The treasurer was late.
Well, that's no unusual for Bretons, is it?
I know, yes. Well, when I went to Brittany initially, I threw my watch away. It was a waste of time, but I was
late.
There was none. He was about an hour late, to be honest, Alan. But I had no problem with the band whatsoever.
No.
It all transpired for that one particular person.
Do you know who the pipe major was at that particular time?
The guy,
Is it Jimmy Work?
Work.
Aye,
Yes, Jimmy Work.
Jimmy's a nice guy. You know.
Jimmy's, he would just make faces, you know.
Aye, I know. Aye. It's just
So
an
the
unfortunate
band
thing, but
never took anything at all to do with it.
I would say, really over the piece, though, you've been fortunate over all the years. That's been an exception, and really, the bands have been pretty good with you, and you've been good with them, and all that sort of stuff. You know.
Well, obviously, I did my best to get them conditions, even better conditions, and they done their best to produce.
But I remember speaking to Yannick Monge about funding. He does studies of Breton language and dance and all that sort of stuff. He's the director of some
Breton language
college or whatever for that. And it's 32 folk working for him, which he done quite a decent job, and his wife's a school teacher as well. That Yannick was telling me that it's a funny thing in France. There's maybe 30 cultural people, delegates, whatever, and they're found out to all the departments and all the rest of it through France, but we say 30, there's still about 20, 22 of them are actually working in Paris, so it's very, very Paris centred.
That's correct.
The whole thing, and the local sort of control from Paris very much tightens up the purse strings just at the drop of a hat. So Britain and the other places in France, I find it very, very difficult from year to year to know what their funding is or how to disperse the funds.
Exactly.
Would that sum it up?
Yep.
Yeah. How did you get on? Did you speak a bit of French when you went across here so many years, or did you bother? Or
I've got a motto. I'll never starve and I'll never go dry. But I can understand, the likes of the festival meetings.
Aye.
I could understand what they were
discussing.
Oh, aye, yes, no problem.
Yeah.
But anything but fluent, I can assure you.
Aye, well.
My wife's much better than me.
Funny enough, I studied French at Alliance Française, as you know. And but to this day, my ear for picking up conversations in a meeting is very, very, I find it difficult. I really do. I can think of what I want to say on a one-to-one basis, and generally I can communicate that way fine. But if I'm sitting round a table, a dinner table for instance, annoyed me when everybody was speaking fluent, fast French, and I was the only one in the company that didn't understand this. And I remember Yannick Monge's turned round to me one time in a restaurant saying, "Do you understand what they're talking about?" I says, "Yannick, I've actually thought about this." I says, "And if I'm at the same dinner table and the Scots round the table in Scotland," I says, "I don't even understand what they're talking about because I'm too busy eating my food. I'm not that particularly interested."
Well,
so we've got to be laid back about the whole thing, because the dinner table conversation's not that great at the best of times, whatever the language is,
But I was quite lucky to a certain extent, especially in Lorient. The president,
Aye.
he was a great guy.
Aye.
His business was distribution of wine spirits.
Uh-huh.
And he had no English whatsoever.
Right.
And he used to look at me around the table, and he would get up and he would go to behind somebody.
Aye.
So silently.
So you left it and followed them away.
We went to a nice restaurant and a meal.
Aye. But you, through your long association. We're just going to finish up in a minute, folks, but I want to get this wee quick bit in. Well, I remember you had a certain affinity with wine, and you had an experience about getting a wee award regarding wines and all the rest of it.
That's right.
Right, tell us about that.
I was made a Chevalier of the wine from Bourgogne in the Loire Valley.
Oh, for goodness sake, right,
The medal's right at your back.
Right, we'll get it, let's see it. Right, okay. Need to hold that one up. Whoops. So, capture that, and I'll get a photograph of it, and we'll get it properly represented later on. So tell us about that. What's the story?
Again, it was through the festival. You know, Piero was supplying wines, and obviously they were the suppliers to him.
Mm-hmm.
And they visited the festival, and we got involved in it was always on a Sunday.
Mm-hmm.
There was a pageant, maybe 200 wine growers,
Right.
and their velvets and their it was like a Balmoral.
Aye.
And parade through the town, and then there was a rendezvous in the town hall,
Yep.
and if you were being made a Chevalier on that particular year, they called your name out, and a massive glass about this size, damn near a bottle of wine, and
Right.
you had to drink it on stage. And after
Was it red or white?
mostly red.
Aye.
There was some rosy, but and there was obviously white, but it was mostly red.
Aye.
And after that, we retired for a banquet
Okay.
in this chateau. And we would maybe arrive in the chateau 1 o'clock.
Mm-hmm.
And that was usually 8 at night.
Goodness sake.
5-course meal, and you were drinking,
The best of wines.
oh dear.
Aye.
So that was an annual visitation after that for many a year,
That's good, eh?
by car.
Aye.
Well, it serves two purposes. It saves a lot of chopping and changing with public transport,
Aye.
and I could bring some wares back.
And some back.
Aye.
Aye. What city was that in?
It was in Bourgogne,
Right.
which was not too far from Saumur.
Right, aye. And Chinon is there as well.
Chinon's just,
Aye.
you've got Saumur, Chinon, Bourgogne.
I've been in Saumur.
Yes, I knew you
Aye.
had contacts
My
in
tour
Saumur.
through France by car. Marvellous.
Aye,
He landed at Bilbao, Brittany Ferries,
Oh, you
and
went-
drove right up to Caen
aye,
in the Channel,
yeah,
and stopped at umpteen places in between. So,
Aye. Aye.
Saumur's a nice place.
Well, that was another plus. The other thing that we've not mentioned was that at one of the morning meetings, the president says, "Dougie, we need a pipe band this afternoon," which I had to be very careful with, because you give them their weekly programme,
Mm-hmm.
and if you wanted to slip someone else in,
So where was this?
in Lorient.
Okay.
And this was to play the Breton astronaut off the plane in his return for the Johnson Space Center in Houston, Texas.
Okay, right.
And that developed through 3 years, and I eventually got an invite to the Space Centre in Texas.
For goodness sake, yeah. Aye.
I was in the simulator
Mm-hmm.
and everything.
Aye.
The captain that was sitting at the side,
Aye.
he'd been up in space 9 times.
Who's this, a Breton chap?
No, the Breton chap had been in space,
Yeah.
but this was him returning home.
How did the Breton chap go into space? Because they'd been late for the interview for a start. Listen, folks, we could sit here all day talking and some marvellous stories. I've heard just one or two, but Dougie and I have been meeting various instances over the years, solo piping in Glasgow, and been across and met in Britain and met some of his glorious friends and all the rest of it. And we've had a lot of good times together. And we're looking forward to using Barra, which Dougie doesn't think will be on, but I'm telling you, it'll be on the beginning of March this year, 2022. Watch this space. So, anyway, we could sit here all day, but we'll need to stop sometime. So, Dougie, thanks very much for your time to Pipers'Persuasion today, and we'll see if we can make a wee programme out of this.
It's a pleasure, Alan. It's a pleasure.
I hope you all enjoy it, folks. I know you've enjoyed the conversation today, so thanks very much.
Thanks, you.
That was okay.
You'll never get something out of it.
Oh, aye, I'm getting something out of it.
Eh?
I'm more than something out of that. Not